If you're looking for a podcast that packs in sound property advice, as well as offering you an insight into making the world of property effective and ultimately work for you, you're in the right place. Hosted by ArshEllahi, the original property rebel. He's written an Amazon bestseller, created the Property Investor app, the UK's first, and is an experienced property mentor. More importantly, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Property Rebel with your host ArshEllahi. So today we're covering a phenomenal topic of rent to rent. So we'll be discussing what is rent to rent, why is it so powerful, the benefits of it, how it benefits from everyone, including the landlord, as well as the person taking the property on, as well as the drawbacks of the strategy. Before we do so, just want to say a quick hello and thank you to all the new subscribers of the channel and the podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're getting lots of content out of it and it's of real benefit to you. So get straight into it. What is rent to rent? Well, believe it or not, it seems like the clue's in the name, but let's start by actually getting clear on what rent to rent actually is. So if you look at it, rent to rent is basically where you rent the property off a landlord and then you rent it out yourself to a tenant. So in effect, you're actually taking control of a property and acting as if you're the landlord, just like as if you own the property yourself. Now, it seems quite simple. Now, there's lots of things to take into consideration of rent to rent, and you've got to make sure that it's pretty pointless unless you actually make a profit. So you've got to make sure that, first of all, tip number one, make sure the numbers all stack up. Otherwise, what you could end up doing is taking all the hassle of the property with none of the benefits. Now, that's why, generally speaking, a landlord would be quite receptive to receiving a guaranteed rent. So let's take it straight back from the beginning, how it works. And just imagine you're the landlord. I come to you and say, hi, Mr. Landlord, I appreciate that you got this property. Why don't you allow me to take this property off you for circa 1, 3, 5 or 7 years? You can't do past 7 years because then it would need to be lodged with land registry as a lease. So we always do up to 7 years, where I give you guaranteed rent, where we look after the maintenance, we make sure that we look after all the tenants, etc. And your rent is guaranteed come rain, sleet or shine. So we generally take properties on that are either single lets or already created into multi-lets. Now, off the back of that, we then potentially turn the property into a HMO if it's from a single let. And then off the back of that, we then run it as a HMO, which means that we're then making sure that it adheres to HMO regulations and make sure that it's got everything in place. And on the back of that, it can be a real win-win. So we're going to talk about the benefits and also the drawbacks from rent to rent. So let's get straight into benefits. First of all, there's no need for mortgages. You're not buying the property, you're literally just renting it, which means that you don't need to worry about getting a mortgage. And the one thing that the reason why rent to rent really works really well with lots of property investors is because some of them are literally looking to dip their toe into property and they want to make sure that does this work for them or does this not, and rent to rent gives them that fantastic opportunity to do that. There's no need for mortgages, there's no need for 25% deposits. As we said, you're not buying the property, therefore there's no need to get or require a 25% deposit, which means that also there's no stamp duty or no legal costs, which in summary means that it allows you to get involved in the property very quickly with very little capital. So it's a very powerful strategy if it's done and if it's implemented correctly. Low capital intensive, ease of entry. So literally when I go and meet a landlord, I could literally meet him that day and on the shake of a hand, I could literally walk away from that property with the keys on the basis of him signing an agreement. Now, just so you know, it's not a normal tenancy agreement. The agreement in there has to have the ability for you to take the property on and either manage it as if you're the property manager or rent the property out on a room by room basis. So some people call it subletting, and then off the back of that, you've got to have the ability to be able to rent the rooms out, because if you take the property on and you're not able to rent it out yourself, let's face it, what's the point? So it's very low capital to get involved. The ease of entry is massive benefit because remember what we talked about, no 25% deposit, no legal costs, no stamp duty, and no mortgages. The one thing that I will say is that the reason why I like this strategy is because there's also the ease of exit as well. Now you might be thinking, well, why is he talking about exit? He's talking about a 3, 5 or 7 year deal. Now, what happens if the property does not perform as you expect it to? Think about it for a second. If you purchase the property, and lots of you may have purchased properties, what happens if that property doesn't perform? What's your only way of exiting that property? The only way that you can actually get out is by selling the property, which means that you have to instruct a solicitor, and then off the back of, you have to instruct an estate agent. Remember, this is one take, guys, so there is no editing. So you have to instruct a estate agent. Off the back of that, he has to then put it on the market. Off the back of that, you've got to hopefully get a purchaser, go through the conveyancing process, and that can take months. And that means that you're also paying the mortgage if you own the property. However, with rent to rent, the breakout clause can be something as simple as 1 month. So you could actually say to the landlord, you know what, guys, this isn't working for me. I'm going to exercise my break clause of 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. And the break clause is also subject to negotiation between the two parties when they're making the contract. And then off the back of that, you can say, guys, okay, I know what my risk profile is now. So with a lot of my properties, I have a 7-year agreement, but I put in a break clause so that any time I can exercise the break by giving 1, 2, 3, or some of them have even given me 6 months break clause notice. So at least that way I know what my risk is to that property. If it's not working for me, I can give them that 1 month notice and I can exit the property. Now, the benefits for both parties are very simple, is that from a landlord's point of view, let's face it, they're getting a guaranteed rent. I'm looking after all the maintenance on the property. I'm bringing the property up to standard. So if it's a single let, I'm now turning it into a multi-let, and in an area of Wolverhampton, multi-let are actually achieving a premium. So I'm actually increasing the value of the property. And because I want to attract the best possible tenants for my property, I'm doing it up to a really good standard, almost like boutique HMO standard. So therefore, when the landlord now comes and inspects his property, he's thinking, hang on, this guy has actually spent quite a lot of money on my property. So we can on average spend 2, 3, maybe even £5,000. On my last one, believe it or not, I actually spent £22,000 on that property. Now, the reason you may be thinking, well, why has he spent so much money on a property that he does not own? Well, I've got a 7-year agreement, but more importantly is that I've done that property up to a phenomenal standard. We've got it as a 6-bed HMO plus a 1-bedroom flat, and the cash flow on that property alone is circa around £2,000 a month. So yeah, you got that right, £2,000 a month. We've done it extremely high end, which means that we're charging high end rents. And off the back of that, it's going to pay us back within just over a year, which means that I've now got 6 years worth of cash flow. More importantly, that property, if I wanted to purchase it, is around £350,000. Now I'm going to get my calculator out. Just on a 25% deposit alone, 350,000, 25% deposit means that I would need 87,500 plus the stamp duty, plus the legal costs, plus the mortgage arrangement costs, plus all the other fees in between. I could very easily have spent £130,000, £140,000 plus the refurb costs, which means that I may be in approximately the best part of £150,000. However, by the shake of a handshake, I've taken that property on, I've spent £22,000 on it, and it's producing income. I managed to negotiate a rent-free period with the landlord because the property was in pretty much derelict. Now, can you imagine going to your mortgage company for a property that you're looking to buy, say, guys, okay, I'm buying this property, but when I buy it, do you mind giving me 3 months rent-free or mortgage-free period, please, because I need to do it up? They're going to say, guys, jog on. So when you're dealing with the landlord, there's so many benefits of being able to work it so it creates a win-win scenario. Now, this property has been empty for over 12 months. Now, I've managed to go, do you reckon another 3 months of payments is going to go miss the landlord? He's already not had rent for the last 12 months. So this is why it's a real benefit to everyone involved. The landlord's now getting income. We've now brought the property up to standard. The property is immaculate. He can come and inspect at any time, providing he gives me 24 hours notice, and he can show it so he can see the property is actually being looked after. Because we have a cleaner that goes into the property twice a week, they're also acting as our eyes and ears on the ground. So therefore, They tell us if there's any issues and we get them dealt with immediately, as we would expect any HMO owner to have. One of the biggest benefits is that I make cash flow from a property that I simply control. Bear in mind that I do not own this property. Now, one thing I will talk about over the next few weeks is lease options and how you can potentially put the option to purchase within the period, and I'll go through that strategy with you. However, for this property, for the next 7 years, I know that I've got full control over it. The property is done up to an immaculate standard. The landlord is happy, the tenants are happy, and I'm simply sitting in the middle, acting as a property manager, making approximately £2,000 a month. Now, there are some drawbacks when it comes to rent to rent. Is that with this property, let's just use this property as an example, because I've increased the value of this property, I will not benefit from the capital growth. So if the owner of this property said that, okay, you can buy it within this period, or let's just say it's worth £350,000 today. In 7 years' time, that property may be worth £400,000. Because I don't own it, I will not benefit from that capital growth. So not only has the landlord had all the rent out the property for the last 7 years, but it'll also benefit from the capital growth as well. I have no ownership of the property. So therefore, that means that I actually own no assets. Now, depending on how you look at it, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. Now, the great quote from the Rockefeller family is that the key to success is to own nothing and control everything. And when you look at some of the largest businesses in the world right now, you're looking at Netflix. They don't own any of the films that they've got. Facebook does not own any of the content that they've got on their platform. Uber does not actually own any of the taxis. So simply, rent to rent is an extension of that. We simply control the property. We have a simple control over the property over the period, and we're making our money in the middle. So it's a really easy business model and anyone can get involved in it. Now, the landlord benefits not only obviously of guaranteed rent, they're not going to have any voids for the next 7 years. They're not going to have to deal with any maintenance for this next 7 years. So the way that I structure our agreements very simply is that I pay for all the maintenance internally. They pay for all the maintenance externally. So if there's a structural issue or anything like that, I make sure that I put in that they're responsible for that. So there's lots of benefits from everyone that's involved. So whether you, just so that you know, guys, also is that you don't also just take rent to rent on just for HMO purpose. Rent to rent can be done for anything. I've taken lots of rent to rents on single lets where I've not done a single thing to it. I've given the landlord a reduced rent, and I'm now renting it out for the full market value. Now, you may ask the question, why would a landlord do this? Why would a landlord give you a reduction in rent? Have you ever thought of the fact that we're buying back their time? Can you put value on their time? So therefore, we go in and say, guys, okay, we're going to rent the property off you for 3, 5 or 7 years. You don't have to worry about a single thing, and guaranteed on the first of the month, you're going to get a direct debit payment from us. And as a result, you don't have to worry about voids, bad debt, and all that kind of stuff. You can also take on single lets. You can take on apartments, and you can even turn those into service accommodation. Now, this has been a big thing over the last few years. So people taking on, so that's actually a strategy called R2SA, so rent to service accommodation. So you've got R2 HMO, rent to HMO, R2R, just rent to rent. Rent to rent is the main umbrella, shall we say. R2 HMO, rent to service accommodation. You've got rent to commercial. You could rent out pretty much anything as long as you've got an end user that's going to be paying you more than what you're paying the landlord. In essence, what you're doing, if you want to put it simply, creaming off the top and giving the landlord what he's due to be paid, you make the cash flow and you're very happy. You've made money from a property that you do not own and you're simply controlling. Finding rent-to-rent properties can be quite difficult, just purely because there are lots of ways to find them, but more importantly, everyone is after them. So naturally, you can go through to letting agents that are letting properties and you say, guys, okay, would you mind if I rented this property off you? And some people use the term corporate let. If I let the property off you on a corporate let basis, and I would give you a guaranteed income. Now, some letting agents are happy with that. Other letting agents aren't. And the reason why they're not happy with it is because they get worried that they're going to get cut out of the equation. Because let's face it, if we're now taking the property off the landlord for the next 5 or 7 years and the landlord's not going to have any issues, why would they need a letting agent? So this does cause a concern for letting agents. Therefore, you've got to make sure that it's a real win-win. And if you are doing it, you've got to make sure that you keep the letting agent in the middle. And one thing that I would say, you've always got to make sure that they know what's in it for them. There are lots of other ways that you can find rent-to-rent properties, and the next one is by finding the owner direct. Now, you can direct mail them simply by getting the HMO register from the local authority website, or you may need to ask the local authority for the HMO register, and you can write to all the HMO registers in the area. You can also write to all the owners that have got single let properties, whether you're driving down the street and you see a sign, whether you see a to let board, and whether you decide instead of approaching the agent, you go direct to owner. I would always suggest, if you can, speak to the owner direct, because you're going to get a better deal. Now, when it comes to analysing, remember what I said, the numbers don't lie. The calculator never lies. So you've got to make sure that you're looking at a couple of things. And when we're analysing a rent-to-rent deal, the first thing that I would always suggest is make sure that there's going to be people who are going to want your property. So the question that I've got to ask is there sufficient tenant demand? You can do this simply by, if you wanted to, put up a dummy advert on places like Spare Room, Gumtree, and Open Rent. They're the three places that I would normally use. And I'd put an advert out and see what kind of response that I get. If no one's inquiring for your room, does that mean that you're going to take a property, turn it into a HMO, and not have anyone live there? Remember, you've got a liability to pay to the landlord. You've got a responsibility to pay the landlord as well, because if you default, the landlord can technically sue you for that liability. Or what you may find is that you're exercising the break clause quicker than you anticipated. So make sure you always understand your local market. Make sure you understand how much rent you can charge, and that will calculate what your gross income is. And then once you've taken into consideration all your costings, so your council tax, water rates, electricity, gas, broadband, cleaner, HMO license, and any other costs that you've got associated with that property, calculate what is your net income. And the reason why I said that this is really important, because this will then also calculate what is your payback period, or what I would consider is your break-even point. At what point do you stop paying back all the stuff that you've paid out from the outset and actually start making money yourself? So remember the property that I took in Wolverhampton, it's cost me 22,000 from the outset, making £2,000 a month. It's going to be around 11 months, 12 months before I actually start seeing any real money. So hopefully that's give you an indication. I'll talk about over the next few weeks about, or the next few episodes, shall I say, about rent to rent, and we can also talk about contracts, because there are contracts that you need to put in place. It's not a standard AST. You will need to look at some form of a management agreement or even a lease. So these are the documents that you'll require for you to be signed between you and the landlord. So I'll be going through these. So in conclusion, the one thing that I would say is that rent to rent, it is very exciting. It's exciting because it can be done on a handshake. It's an exciting way to get involved in property quickly and start generating some cash quickly. It removes all the hassle because you're literally doing it very quickly, and it removes the ease of entry and exit is a massive plus. More importantly, it creates real win-wins for everyone involved. It creates a win for the landlord, it creates a win for you, and it also creates a win for the tenants involved. So guys, hopefully you've enjoyed that session. As always, if you're interested in finding a little bit more about who I am and what I do, feel free to find me on social media channels. So you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and also YouTube. I've got quite an active YouTube channel. You can search for me by searching ArshEllahi on YouTube. Finally, I should say that if you're looking for rent-to-rent deals, we've also got lots of packaged rent-to-rent deals on the Property Investor app. So you could go to the Property Investor app, and if you haven't already downloaded it, you can do so by going to propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or you can go to the App Store on your mobile phone and search for Property Investor on the iOS app or the Google Play app. Finally, I'd like to thank you for listening to the session, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
The large majority of people make a positive change if they take immediate action. So act now. Download the Property Investor app and join Arsh on his social media channels to excel your property journey.